What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? That's exactly what played out live on The View when action legend Chuck Norris appeared for what was supposed to be a simple interview about his veterans' charity work. But instead, walked straight into a verbal crossfire with Joy Behar. What started as a routine celebrity segment quickly spiraled into full-blown television chaos. The tension rose so high that producers called in security, and by the end of the segment, someone was escorted off set. And it wasn't who you'd expect. This wasn't just daytime drama. This was a cultural collision that left audiences stunned. The morning began like any other at The View. Chuck Norris arrived early, calm and professional as always. He was there to promote his work with veterans organizations, a cause he'd championed for years. He'd done these interviews countless times, shake some hands, share some heartfelt stories, and move on. But this time, Joy Behar had something else in mind. As Chuck settled into his seat during the commercial break, Joy leaned in with that unmistakable smirk, an early warning for long-time viewers. "So, Chuck," she said sweetly, "I hope you're ready for some real questions today. Not just the fluff." Chuck raised an eyebrow but stayed cool. "I'm always ready for real questions, Joy. Fire away." As the show resumed, Whoopi Goldberg began the formal intro. "Our next guest is a martial arts icon, action movie star, and a philanthropist dedicated to helping veterans. Please welcome Chuck Norris." The crowd applauded. Chuck smiled. Then Joy pounced. "Chuck," she said sharply, cutting off Whoopi before the first question. "Don't you think it's a bit hypocritical for someone who made millions glorifying violence to now claim to care about veterans' mental health?" The studio went dead silent. Chuck's jaw tightened, but his tone remained even. "Joy, with all due respect, I think you're misrepresenting both my work and my intentions. I've supported veterans long before it was trendy, and my films have always been about justice and protecting the innocent, not promoting senseless violence." Joy rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, come on. Chuck, Walker, Texas Ranger was a weekly tribute to toxic masculinity. Kicking down doors and beating people up doesn't exactly scream mental health awareness." Chuck's calm began to harden. That show tackled real issues: domestic violence, drug abuse, corruption, and we always promoted values like accountability and protecting the vulnerable. "Family values." Joy scoffed. "You mean the kind where the big, macho guy solves everything with his fists while the women stand on the sidelines looking helpless?" "Real progressive." Co-host Sarah Haynes tried to step in. "Maybe we could focus on the charity work Chuck's here to talk about." But Joy wasn't done. "No, I think this matters," she insisted. "Chuck, you've been outspoken about your politics. Don't you think you have a responsibility to push for real, nuanced solutions instead of feeding this might makes right narrative?" Chuck leaned forward, his voice firmer now. "Joy, I've spent my life teaching discipline, self-respect, and using strength to protect, not to dominate. My charity work isn't about politics. It's about helping men and women who've sacrificed everything. Attack my films if you want, but don't question my dedication to the people I serve." "I'm not attacking you," Joy shot back, though her tone said otherwise. "I'm questioning the message you've sold for decades. You've built a brand on being the guy who never loses a fight. What message does that send to young men facing challenges that can't be solved with a roundhouse kick?" Now the tension was unbearable. Even the cameraman hesitated. The live feed kept rolling, but everyone in the studio could feel it. Chuck Norris's famously calm demeanor was being pushed to the edge. "You're missing the point, Joy," Chuck said, his voice now low and steely. "Martial arts is not about violence. It's about self-control, respect, and standing up for people who can't defend themselves. That's what I've stood for my whole life." And that's when things crossed a line. Joy stood up. Chuck stood too. Security appeared off camera. Words were exchanged that didn't make it to air. And moments later, one of them was escorted out, Spoiler, it wasn't Chuck. Chuck leaned in, trying to bring the conversation back to his mission. That's exactly what I'm trying to do with my veteran outreach. Create real support systems for real people. But Joy wasn't letting up. You're still feeding the myth that violence solves problems, she shot back. You've made millions pushing the idea that the good guy wins by using his fists. Real life doesn't work that way, Chuck. Real problems need real solutions, not Hollywood heroics. Chuck's voice dropped, calm but commanding. What I've taught is that good people need the courage to stand up to bullies. And right now, Joy, that's exactly what you're acting like. You invited me here to talk about helping veterans, and instead, you're tearing me down for entertainment. The crowd began to stir. A low murmur ran through the audience, some nodding, others looking nervously at the stage. Joy's expression hardened, but instead of backing off, she pressed forward. I'm asking valid questions about the cultural message you've been sending for decades, she snapped. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be out here promoting yourself. I'm not here promoting myself, Chuck replied, his voice rising for the first time. I'm promoting initiatives that fight veteran depression, addiction, homelessness. But you'd rather score political points than help the people you claim to care about. Joy leaned in, voice sharp as a blade. Political points? Really? Let's talk about how you've aligned yourself with politicians who cut funding for the same veteran programs you say you support. That's not charity. That's hypocrisy. Chuck's eyes narrowed. Joy, you clearly have no idea what you're talking about. I work with groups on both sides of the aisle. Because veterans aren't a partisan issue. But you can't see past your own bias to even acknowledge that. Joy let out a bitter laugh. My bias is holding people accountable. You can't play America's hero on screen for decades and then stay silent when real heroes, veterans, are being left behind. Silent. Chuck's voice dropped into a cold, steely growl. Lady, I've donated more time and money to veteran causes than you've likely earned in your entire career. And I do it quietly, without a camera crew following me around, unlike some people. The hit landed. Joy's face flushed red. Don't you dare lecture me about helping people, she snapped. I've been using my platform to fight for the underdog since before you were fake, kicking villains on a soundstage. Fake villains. Chuck's eyebrows shot up. Joy, look around. You're proving right now that some villains are very real. You brought me on here under false pretenses, then ambushed me because you don't like my politics. That's not journalism. That's petty. Whoopi Goldberg finally tried to intervene. Okay, let's all take a breath. Maybe we can refocus this discussion. But Joy wasn't done. Her voice grew louder, more agitated. Petty? You want to see petty? How about the fact that your tough guy image has helped create a culture where men think violence is the answer? How many young guys have gotten hurt trying to be you, Chuck Norris? That's enough. Chuck cut in, his tone slicing through the tension like a blade. You're twisting everything I've ever stood for. I've spent a lifetime promoting self-discipline, restraint, and protecting others. If you can't tell the difference between that and promoting violence, then you're either completely ignorant or deliberately dishonest. Dishonest. Joy nearly shouted, her voice cracking. I'm dishonest. You sit here acting like a saint when you've made millions off violent entertainment. At least I own who I am. Chuck stared at her, deadly calm. Who are you? Joy. Because right now, you're someone who invited me on to talk about helping veterans. And instead, you chose to ambush me. You claim to care. But all you've done is try to destroy someone who's actually trying to help. The room was dead silent. The audience watched, transfixed. Even the other hosts seemed frozen, unsure how to step in. Joy fired back quickly. I asked the hard questions. I don't swallow the sanitized stories, people, like you try to sell. You've built your image on never backing down, So don't act surprised when someone finally pushes back. Chuck tilted his head slightly, a wry smile forming. Joy, this isn't a fight. This is you throwing a tantrum because someone dared to disagree with you. A real fight, real dialogue, requires mutual respect. What you're doing is bullying, plain and simple. Bullying. Joy's voice hit a shrill note. You're calling me a bully. That's rich coming from a man who made a career intimidating people. My career, Chuck said, his voice intensifying, is based on protecting people. And you know what? You're right about one thing. I don't back down from bullies. Not in real life. And not when they're hiding behind a talk show desk. The atmosphere was electric. Studio crews scrambled behind the scenes. Audience members leaned forward in their seats, eyes wide. Joy leaned forward, jaw clenched. So what now, Chuck? Are you going to karate chop me? Show everyone how the tough guy deals with a woman who isn't scared of him. Chuck didn't flinch. Joy, I've never laid a hand on someone who didn't deserve it. And I'm not about to start with you. But I will say this. You've shown everyone here exactly who you are. Someone who tears people down instead of lifting them up. Someone more interested in TV drama than real impact. Joy shot back instantly. Don't psychoanalyze me. I've fought for the truth longer than you've pretended to be a hero. I've taken on bigger blowwords than you. And won. Chuck's voice was dangerously low. Joy, you've been talking for 10 minutes straight, throwing out insults, twisting facts, questioning my character. So let me ask, who's the blowword here? The crowd murmured again. Joy's attacks were starting to feel less righteous, more personal. Chuck's quiet resolve was shifting the energy in the room. But Joy had one last card to play. You know what your real problem is, Chuck. You can't stand being challenged by someone who's not impressed. You're used to adoration. But I'm not impressed. I see right through your act. Chuck met her gaze with steel. Then maybe it's time you stop looking at the act and start paying attention to the actions. The studio went silent, and in that moment, it was clear. This wasn't just a clash of opinions, it was a collision of worlds. And neither one was walking away unchanged. Chuck's voice was like steel, measured, but cutting. Joy, there's no act here. I came on this show to talk about helping veterans. You've twisted it into a spectacle of personal attacks. The only one performing here is you, playing the part of a justice crusader when all you're really doing is stirring drama for ratings. The blow landed hard. Joy's face drained of color, her rage bubbling beneath the surface. How dare you question my integrity? She hissed. I've spent my entire career standing up for what's right, while you've been running around in costume pretending to be a hero. At least when I fight, it's for something real. Chuck stood slow and deliberate. The room seemed to shift as his presence overtook the studio. You want to know what matters? Joy, he said, his voice echoing in the silent space. What matters is helping people who are suffering. What matters is treating your guests with basic human respect. What matters is using your platform to lift people up, not tear them down or push your personal agenda. The tension in the room was razor sharp. Even Joy was momentarily stunned, caught off guard by the sheer intensity of his calm authority. You know what? Chuck said, glancing across the room. We're done. I came here to talk about veterans, not to be ambushed. I won't be part of your circus. He turned to leave. Oh, no you don't. Joy snapped, leaping to her feet. You don't get to walk in here, preach at us, and storm off when someone finally challenges your precious public image. Sit down, Chuck. We're not finished. Chuck turned, expression cold as marble. Joy, I'm not one of your spineless guests you can push around. I came here as a courtesy. And now I'm leaving. Same way I came in, with dignity. You don't control me. Can't handle a little confrontation, huh? Joy said, her voice dripping with contempt. All those years doing staged fight scenes, and you fold the second someone hits back with words. The other hosts looked stunned. Whoopi was frantically signaling producers off camera. Sarah Haynes had her head in her hands. But Joy wasn't letting go. "You think you're so tough," she pressed, stepping closer to Chuck. "But you're just another fragile male ego who can't handle being questioned by a woman. That's what this is really about. You can't stand that I'm not afraid of you." Chuck's eyes flashed, his tone sharp but still controlled. "Joy, don't make this about gender. This isn't about you being a woman. It's about you being rude, condescending, and dishonest. From the moment I sat down, you've treated me like a punching bag. That's not journalism. That's bullying." "Bullying?" Joy laughed bitterly. "You keep using that word, but I don't think you understand it. A bully is someone who uses strength to intimidate. Sound familiar?" Chuck didn't blink. "No. A real bully is someone who abuses their platform to target someone who can't fight back on equal terms. You have the mic, you have the crowd, and you ambushed me. That's bullying." Joy's face contorted with fury. "Ambushed you. I told you what this was. This is The View, Chuck. We ask tough questions. We don't do fluff pieces for washed-up action stars looking for relevance." Chuck's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Washed up. I've spent decades building schools, funding veteran programs, mentoring at-risk youth. What have you done, besides sit at this desk and tear people down?" Joy struck back instantly. "I've fought for civil rights. I've stood up to corrupt power. I've used this chair to give a voice to people who didn't have one. And unlike you, I don't need to punch people to make a point." Chuck didn't flinch. "Neither do I," he replied. "But I'm starting to understand why some people might want to." The audience gasped. Even Chuck seemed momentarily surprised by what he'd said. But Joy didn't miss a beat. "There it is!" she exclaimed, triumphant. "The real Chuck Norris. When words don't work, imply violence. How very predictable." "I didn't threaten anyone," Chuck said firmly. "I made an observation about how your hostility affects others. But you're so desperate to make me the villain, you'll twist anything I say." "Twist your words?" Joy snapped. "You mean like how you twist reality in every one of your movies? Violence is always the answer, right? That's the fantasy you've sold for decades. And now, when someone talks back, you act like you're the victim." Chuck narrowed his eyes. "I don't need to play the victim, Joy. I've faced real danger. I've met real heroes. And I know the difference between someone who fights for something and someone who just fights to be heard." Joy stepped even closer, her voice venomous. "You think you're better than everyone else because you can throw a punch. But here, on this stage, that doesn't matter. Here, you either defend your values with words, or you leave." Chuck took a deep breath, then looked at her with a kind of solemn disappointment. "I didn't come here to fight, Joy. I came to serve. But if all you want is conflict, then you'll have to find someone else to yell at." With that, he turned and walked off stage. And for the first time all morning, Joy had no comeback. Joy's voice was reaching a fever pitch. "You just implied that I deserved to be beaten up because I dared to ask tough questions," she shouted. "That's not twisting your words. That's exactly what you said." Chuck's patience finally snapped. "That's not what I said." He shot back, his tone clipped and controlled. "And you know it." He leaned forward slightly, his composure unraveling for the first time. "But you know what, Joy? I'm done trying to reason with someone who's determined to misunderstand everything I say. You want to make me the villain? Fine. You want a circus? Congratulations. You've got one." Chuck reached for his mic, beginning to remove it. But Joy wasn't finished. "Don't you dare walk away from me!" she yelled. "You came on my show. You answer my questions. You don't get to storm off just because you don't like them." Chuck froze mid-step, then turned back slowly. "Your show," he said, voice icy. "Joy, this is The View, not the Joy Behar Show. You're one of 5 hosts, not the queen of daytime TV. And you certainly don't get to hold anyone hostage because you're having a meltdown. A meltdown, Joy repeated, her voice cracking with fury. You think this is about me having a bad day? No, Chuck. This is about you, a coward who can't handle real criticism. Chuck turned to face her, his voice now edged with fire. Criticism. Joy, you haven't offered a single fact this entire segment. What you've done is insult me, question my motives, and assassinate my character on live television. He shook his head. That's not journalism. That's not accountability. That's just cruelty dressed up as commentary. Character assassination. Joy's laugh was loud and bitter. You don't have character to assassinate. You're a washed-up action star using veterans as a PR stunt to stay relevant. The room went silent. Even the camera operators froze. Everyone knew Joy had crossed the line. When Chuck spoke again, his voice was a whisper, but it carried more weight than Joy's shouting ever could. I've been respectful. I've been patient. I've tried to meet you halfway, he said. But accusing me of exploiting veterans, people I've spent decades supporting, isn't just wrong. It's evil. And I won't stand here and let you say it. Joy scoffed. Evil. I'm evil now. For asking questions. For not buying into your polished, all-American hero routine. No, Chuck replied, his voice firm. You're not evil for asking questions. You're evil for ignoring the answers because they don't fit your narrative. Joy sneered. I've been calling out frauds like you my entire career. Chuck, you think you scare me. I see right through you. Chuck had heard enough. That's it, he said, turning to the crew. Security, please escort me out before this becomes something we both regret. Joy rolled her eyes. Oh, now you need security. What's the matter? Chuck can't handle a little old lady with a microphone. Chuck stopped in his tracks. He turned back, and when he spoke, his voice carried a chilling clarity. Joy, he said, slow and deliberate. I'm leaving because I'm a gentleman. But keep pushing, and you're going to find out exactly why I spent my life mastering self-control. The Joy's eyes widened. Was that a threat? She demanded. Did you just threaten me on live television? Chuck stared at her coldly. No, that was a promise. A promise that I'll walk out of here with my dignity. Something you lost a long time ago. He turned and headed toward the exit. But Joy couldn't let it go. Run away, Chuck, she shouted after him. Run away like the coward you are! Show the world what happens when the great Chuck Norris faces a real fight! Chuck paused at the edge of the stage. Then, slowly, he turned back one last time. Joy, he said, locking eyes with her. I've been in real fights. I've faced real enemies. But I've never seen anything quite like you. You're not a fighter. You're not a journalist. And you're definitely not a voice for justice. He shook his head. You're just someone who gets paid to tear people down. And that's the saddest role of all. With that, Chuck Norris walked off the set of The View, leaving behind a stunned studio, and a host who had finally met someone she couldn't steamroll into submission. The cameras lingered on Joy's face for a few seconds, silent, speechless, and visibly shaken. Then the producers abruptly cut to commercial. But the damage was already done. In less than 20 minutes, Joy Behar had turned a simple interview into a masterclass in what not to do as a host. And Chuck Norris. He walked out with his integrity, and the audience on his side. So what do you think? Did Chuck do the right thing by walking away? Or should he have stood his ground even longer? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more unfiltered moments from the world of entertainment.